Today is a day of multitasking. I've got a goal to can most, if not all, of my dried beans. I worked on that a few weeks ago. I did my navy beans and my Great Northerns. I'm working today on my pinto beans. Dry beans are a good thing to have. It's a good prepping item. I encourage it. I have plenty of them. But if they just stay in the dry stage, it can cause a lot more work should something happen if the lights go out and you need to cook these and eat these because you can't get to the store or something. It takes a lot of energy, not just your physical energy, but a lot of energy to cook beans from the dry stage to edible, to being able to eat them and enjoy them. You can't just use a bag of dry beans for a snack or anything like that. They're just too hard. You have to cook them. You have to do something with them. So while I can, I'm going ahead and putting up as many beans as I can in pressure can jars. I did my navy beans and my Great Northerns, and I had ham and ham hocks that I put in there with them. And that's what the recipe calls for. Today, I don't have any ham or ham hocks. I didn't want to go to the store, so I'm just doing the beans. So I'm canning them. That's what I'm working on today. Let me show you the recipe I'm using. This is the Ball preserving cookbook that I have, the Ball Blue Book Guide to Preserving. This is the cover. It's a very popular book. It's got lots of recipes in it. A lot of people have this book. There are different versions of the Ball book because they print them different years and sometimes things change. I don't know if this is anywhere near the newest version. It's just the one I have, and I've used it and it really works well, and I'm gonna stick with it. The recipe that I'm using in this particular cookbook is on page 103, and it's called bean soup. You'll see it calls for 2 cups of the beans, which is about 1 pound. I don't really measure anything. I just go with a 1 pound pack. It also calls for a ham hock or salt pork, which it would be wonderful if I had it. I don't. I'm skipping it today. And it just calls for a 1/2 cup of chopped onion. I used a good bit more than that. It calls for a 1/2 of a hot red pepper. I didn't use that at all. And then it calls for salt and pepper to taste. I use salt, pepper, a little cayenne pepper in place of that hot red pepper. And then I also put a little Tony Chachere's in mine. And then I'll just follow the directions. Just to give you a little idea of how I'm multitasking, you put the navy beans in a large pot. You bring them to a boil with some water over them, and then you let them only boil 2 minutes and then leave them for an hour to just sit there. So once they boil that 2 minutes, I can go do something. Then you come back and you add your ham hock if you're using one, your onions and your seasonings or whatever. And then you get it up to a boil, back it down to a simmer, and you simmer it covered for 2 hours. So that gives me 2 more hours to kind of take care of things. The only way you can really multitask rather than just doing one thing and moving to another thing and moving to another thing, the way to really multitask is when some of these things have lag times like that, like soaking beans. Go do something else. So I've been in and out of my house all day, running to move water hoses around my yard. I just went outside in the last 20 or 30 minutes of this 2-hour cooking of the beans. And I went along the side of my house and put fertilizer along a row, along the edge of my house where my cherry tomatoes used to be. I put fertilizer along that row that I had already kind of raked up and got ready to plant in. And then I went through there just now and I planted some kohlrabi, some tatsoi, and some lettuce. We'll see how it does. Our weather is still kind of crazy. It got cool, overcast there for a few days. Next week, it's calling for getting back up into the 80s. Well, later this week, I think. It's supposed to be back up into the 80s. So it's up and down. It's hard to grow lettuce and things when the soil's hot, but I'm going to go ahead and just plant. I'll replant later if I don't see things coming up, but I'm going to go ahead and plant because it seems to have entered that stage where we're going to go up and down, cool nights, hot days, you know, it's all over the place. I'm just going to plant. I'm getting seeds in the ground. I actually just turned off the fire on these beans. They've been cooking for 2 hours. And so I'm going to go ahead and jar up my pinto beans and see how many I come up with. The recipe says it'll yield about 5 pint or 2 quart jars. I'm using quart jars for the most part. I did have 1 extra quart jar I threw in there just for any rollover. If I don't need a whole quart jar, I got a pint jar sitting here in case all I need is a little bit extra. Sometimes if it says 2 quarts is all you're gonna make, I don't know. I usually tend to go ahead and wash and prepare an extra jar or two just in case. Oh, by the way, I doubled my recipe, so that's why you see so many jars. So instead of using these first 4 that the recipe calls for, I added a quart and a pint just for any extra. So I did double my recipe. And I feel like if you're going to cook beans and you're going to spend a few hours doing all this, double the recipe. Because you don't want to start a canner with 2 quarts in it. Double it if you can, triple it if you can. I actually have some pinto beans laying here, and I'm going to start a second batch as soon as this first batch gets put in the pressure canner. All right, it made 5 full quarts. I didn't have to use the little pint jar, but all of my quart jars are full to the top. Had a little bit of juice left, and that was it. Anyway, I'm going to close the lid on this and get this going. And then there's always that lag time of it coming up to pressure. And then you put the regulator on it, and then it has to start singing to you. So there's all kind of little moments where you can go do other things. I try not to just go off and leave my canner, but I can do things like folding clothes, washing clothes, drying clothes. I can get organized. A lot of times I'll pay my bills, I'll balance the checkbook, I'll do whatever I can to stay busy during this time. I don't really ever just sit around and watch TV. I may have a video playing while I'm working, but I keep going, I keep doing something. And at the end of the day, you look back when you do multitask and when you do try to accomplish a lot of things during the day, and you can look back and you can say, I did pretty good. I did pretty good. If this made 5 quarts and I'm making another batch, then that'll be 10 quarts of pinto beans all of a sudden on my shelf tonight. That's great. 1 quart of those beans will feed me, Richard, and my son at night, probably with leftovers, especially if I add some sausage or some other type of meat to it. So that's fabulous. 1 jar feeding 3 adults for maybe a night or so, you know, with lunch the next day and everything. That's wonderful. That's an accomplishment. And then also, if in the meantime, I've gotten seeds planted, I've gotten things watered, I picked up some trash out of my yard. It was things that were already here when we moved here, but just debris. I keep finding wires and just all kind of little things that I find out in that yard all the time. They must have lived here a long time because I keep finding all kind of things. And I pile them up kind of. So today our garbage was coming, so I went and set some of it out by the road. And it took me 3 trips to get what I wanted out there to the road. So, but even that feels like a good accomplishment. And I've got other things I want to do. It's not just this. It doesn't just end right here. I'll show you a few more things I'm going to try today. There's one thing I've never done before, but I'm going to try it. And if it tastes good, if it works out good, it's something that I can kind of make for myself now without having to run to the store and pay retail all the time. I'll show you what that is in just a minute. I put 2 large packs of boneless thighs in my roaster oven last night, my big countertop roaster oven, and I cooked them and then cut them into pieces. And my goal was that was going to be my chicken for my dressing for Thanksgiving. I got it on sale, so I went ahead and jumped on it. It ended up being more chicken than I needed, so I had a little left over that I was putting in a separate Ziploc. And my husband said, "Will you make quesadillas?" So chicken quesadillas, which I love to make. So I said yes, and the reason I'm showing you this is because I'm going to try to make my own tortillas this time. I'm out of tortillas. I usually have them stocked, but I'm out. We used them all. I have everything else I need. I have an onion, I have the chicken, I have the shredded cheese. I don't want to go to the store today to get tortillas. I might have to because I don't know how this is going to go. But I have this masa. I actually have a bunch of bags of it. I bought it in bulk a while back, put it in Ziplocs, which obviously I bought it August of 20, put it in Ziplocs, and it has been in my freezer ever since. I haven't used it. I think it's fine. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I had cut the recipe off of the bag of the masa that I had bought, showing how to make your own tortillas. So I'm going to follow this recipe this evening, not right now, because I don't have a burner to fry them on right now. But I'm going to follow this recipe. It looks pretty easy, and basically the first thing it tells you is go ahead and heat your skillet. Then you just combine this masa with some warm water, and you knead it well, make it into a ball, and then you take the ball and separate it into little bitty 1.5-inch balls, and you flatten them out in between some wax paper and make your tortillas. So it sounds easy. there's no rising or setting it under a towel or anything like that. So I'm gonna give it a go this evening and just see. I have a store down the road if I need to go get some other tortillas, but I'm gonna try it. And this is just one of the things I'm kind of adding to my little list today. It's saving me a trip to the store, but it is, you know, an unknown, so I don't know how it's gonna go. But you gotta try it. And I have all this masa, and if I find out I can make some tortillas that are all right, that come out okay, then I don't have to buy tortillas for a while, because I have plenty of masa, and chances are I'll have plenty of warm water. So it's something that I kind of can cross off my list for a little while and not worry about as far as stocking back up on tortillas. I'll show you whenever I start doing them, and I'll let you know how it turns out. I'm waiting on my regulator to sing, so I'm gonna walk out here real quick and take this hose off of my new plantings that I have over here. This is where I planted the kohlrabi, the tatsoi, and the lettuce. So I'm gonna move this hose and kind of get it off of there. I love hearing this sound when you're canning. And I've got my next batch already pre-boiled for 2 minutes, and they need to soak for an hour. I put the water hose right now over here where I planted a whole bunch of peas the other day. And they're all coming up. Planted them all there where I had my Jubilee tomatoes last year. This new row I had started, I've got them planted all along there. And in front of those, can't see it, but I buried all of my daffodil bulbs on the front of that row. Planted them along this little row, and they're coming up. And then this is my azalea branch row, and I planted them all up in here. And it looks like I'm having really good germination with them all up in here. This is the Thomas Laxton English peas. I used the last of a bag. That's why I wanted to go ahead and go with these. First of all, they get kind of tall. So if they do good, they'll grow up onto these branches, which is what I want. You don't want to grow a low growing pea with these branches. It'll just waste these branches. So I planted the Thomas Laxtons. They're not new. I've had them 3 or 4 years, but they germinated very well in early spring, and I got a lot of peas off of them. And this was the last of my bag, and I don't want to waste anything, so I went ahead and planted them here. And I'm hoping that they'll keep on going. They came up, and I'm hoping they'll keep on going. Well, I had to come back in, but I'm going to use this time to fold these clothes. My canner's going in the background, but I was going to show you this whole green bucket here has the last of the seeds that I need to plant around my house. I have a little schedule there, you know, typical Lainey. I made a list. I just sketch it out in my own little language. But I got the first thing done a while ago, the kohlrabi, the tatsoi, and the Great Lakes lettuce along the side of my house. So, got something done, but I'm gonna tuck this in here like that, and work this evening. That's another of my multitasking. While my beans that I'm pre-soaking right now for an hour, I'll get them started to cook for 2 hours. And they're just on a low simmer. And while that's going, I will go out and plant some of these things, just coming in and out. My canner will be done by then, so it'll go off. I'll get it cooled down, and then I'm gonna need to use it again to can that second batch of beans later, which will pull me back inside. So while I have a few minutes, I'll go outside and try to plant the last of some of this stuff. I got the first 5 quarts out of the canner. They're doing good. Finished up cooking the second batch, and I've got them canned and put in the canner. I'm fixing to put the lid on it and rock and roll with those. Once it pressures up, they've got to cook an hour and a half. So that takes a little while. And I've got a burner ready there for my masa tortillas, which I'm a little bit nervous about because I don't know if you can see my clock back there. It's 6:20. Our little store closes at 8. And I really wanted to go out there and plant a couple more seeds before it got dark. I think I'm just going to plant the seeds, take a chance on the tortillas, and if I can't make it to the store, I'll just punt and do something else. I'll know before I mess up all that chicken and stuff whether it's going to work. They'll either taste good or they won't, but I'm going to try that in just a second. Time to work on the tortillas now. Do they have to look round and pretty? I'm hoping not. I'm just doing this with my hand, and this is how mine came out. Well, this is me in my car going to the store at 7:15 at night to get tortillas because those masa things were disgusting. I don't know if that's how people eat them or if it's just an acquired taste or what, but it ain't for me. I'm gonna go get some at the store and have to come back and cook supper really fast. Good old flour tortillas from the store. That's what I'm talking about. If you don't take anything else away from this video, please take this away. When you're doing your filling for your quesadillas, add a dollop or two of mayonnaise and stir it in. Whether you're using chicken or steak or crawfish or shrimp, add a dollop or two of mayonnaise. You won't taste it in the final product. You won't. But it makes it moist, and it just gives your quesadillas a moisture that it doesn't have if you're just using shredded cheese and dry chicken or another dry ingredient. And we have found here lately that we like to use shredded mozzarella cheese in our quesadillas. It might sound a little funny, but a lot of people use cheddar, but we like it. My son kind of asked me that I just use the mozzarella from now on, so maybe give that a try too one day. To cook your quesadillas, just put a few pats of butter in the bottom of a skillet. You put a good scoop of your filling and then fold it over. I use 2 tortillas and go ahead and make 2 in my black iron skillet. You cook them until they're brown on one side, then you flip them and you cook them again on the other side until they're good and golden brown, and that's it. Well, I hope y'all enjoyed kind of following me on my day today. Every day is kind of like this. I just do different things all the time. Eventually, everything kind of gets accomplished. Eventually. You just have to kind of roll with it, give yourself some grace, and you'll get things done eventually. This is Lainey at Hilltop Home Place. Thank y'all so much. Bye-bye.